All right, so I really wanted to talk real quick about Activity 1.3, the test flight. For us, it's part 2. This is where you actually build your straw jet. And I know for those of you who are virtual, you may want a little extra help. So I want to just walk you through the process real quick, just to give you an idea. First off, a couple of things on the materials. It calls for stuff like transparent tape, scissors, stuff like that. Use what you got. I've got a roll of blue tape. That's what I'm going to be using today because I don't have any transparent Scotch tape. I'll work with it. If you don't have card stock, just go ahead and use a regular sheet of paper. You can use lined notebook paper if that's what you got. Okay. The only thing that you really have to have is some sort of a plastic drinking straw. So, next time if you happen to be out, you get a drink someplace like a McDonald's or whatever, just hang on to the straw because you'll use that. So let's talk about how we build these. All right, so I've got my materials. This is one of the Fuselage templates. It's roughly, a hand width by maybe a little more than a hand width in size. If you want actual measurements as to how big this piece happens to be, this one's about 4.5 by 5.25. Theoretically, it's about a quarter of a sheet of paper. So if you fold a full sheet of paper into fourths over and over, and then just rip or cut it along those lines, you'll be fine. But it's about a quarter of a sheet of paper. I've also got some airfoil templates. These are roughly about 2 fingers wide, 3 fingers tall. Okay. And there's a couple of them. Again, these don't have to be perfect measurements. They can be just as close as you can get them. In our Google Classroom, you've got a template. You can print that out and just cut those and use those. But that's a good starting place. So to get you started, what you're going to do is you're going to take your straw and you're going to take your template piece and you're just going to start rolling it over your straw. Okay. Once again, doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be super tight. You just want to get it going so that it's fairly close. It's not a huge deal. I'm just going to scroll, and you notice I'm not straight, not a big deal, but I'm just going to roll it over so you get a tube, and I'm going to make sure that that tube is fairly loose on the straw. I don't want the straw to be caught in there. So I've got this, and all I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and take a piece of tape, which I should have ripped a couple of little pieces ahead of time, but I wasn't thinking ahead. But I'm just going to take a couple of little pieces of tape, and I'm going to try and tape this so that it stays as a little cylinder. Once I get one little piece of tape on, I can grab another piece. Maybe I'm going to make a big long one and just cut myself sort of a long, narrow strip. If you've got scissors, you can do that. I obviously just used a box knife. But we'll go ahead and we'll tape this and just run this all the way down it because our goal is basically to create a tube. Okay. So in this tube, once again, should fit over your straw and it should be fairly loose. Okay. So it should slide on and off without a problem. Next up, you have to make your airfoils. And there are a lot of different designs. You looked at those videos for the airfoils. So what you're going to do is you're going to take these and you're going to fold these into whatever you feel is accurate. In this case today, I'm just going to make a real quick basic symmetrical airfoil. So again, I'm going to prep ahead this time. I'm going to make myself a couple of little pieces of tape that I can use here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to fold my airfoil piece over. And I'm going to add just a little piece of tape in the back. Okay, and I look at that and hey, I have, a basic symmetrical airfoil. You can sort of see it from the side there. And I'm going to repeat that one more time because you need 2 of them because you have to have 2 airfoils in order for this to work. Okay, so go ahead, line that up. And again, I'm not worried about being perfect because it's not going to be perfect. This is really just about exploring airfoils and how they work. But there we go. I've got a pair of roughly symmetrical airfoils, about the same size either way, and I've got my fuselage. So now I've got to connect my airfoils to my fuselage. So to do that, again, I'm just going to, again, take some tape. I'm going to take maybe a couple of longer pieces. We'll see how this works out. And we're just going to tape them to it. So I look at this and I decide, well, where's the front end? Where's the back end? That's what I've got to figure out next. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to sort of lay these maybe about right there. Okay. And well, I'm going to take this piece of tape. I'm going to start it here. I'm going to run it across onto my other one. So they're starting to be attached, and I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to flip that over, and I'm going to get another piece of tape. And in fact, maybe I'm going to get some smaller pieces of tape, and we're just going to tape this sucker on there like that. Okay, it's not perfect. It's not meant to be. Don't freak out if yours isn't perfect, because obviously mine's not either. Okay, and maybe if I look at this, I decide that I think it needs another piece of tape sort of across the middle here to try and attach these airfoils a little better. Once again, it's not meant to be a gotcha. Don't worry if yours doesn't look perfect. You can obviously see that mine looks pretty awful. Okay, we're just experimenting and sort of looking at how do airfoils work. Now, the better you can make them symmetrical, okay, the better it's going to fly, things like that. The last thing we have to do is we actually have to seal this end. So I'm going to pinch this end down. I'm just going to pinch it 3 or 4 times real hard. It already starts to want to stay shut. You can see that right there. It wants to stay shut. And I'm going to take, again, one little piece of tape, lay that across the end there, and I'm going to make sure it's nice and pinched tight. And I'm going to put a piece of tape right across the end. So that there is the basics of how you're putting together this. Now, obviously, this looks really rough. I did this super fast. I'm using just blue masking tape instead of Scotch tape, which will work better. But it gives you the basics. As for launching, all you do is you put your straw right in there. You'll hold it horizontally, parallel to the ground, and you set up your launching area like you did in activity 1-1, where you have a launch line and you have some sort of a standing, or excuse me, a target about six steps ahead of you, things like that. And then you just blow with your mouth and it shoots off the end. So that's the basics for building this at home for your testing that you can use to then run your minimum of 3 trials as you go. Okay, so hopefully that helps you as you lay out and design your glider.